10x isn't necessarily about making more money. I think that often it can be, and that comes along with it, but it's framed in this idea of when you 10x something, you actually expand and you go deeper into becoming a better version of yourself, either professionally or personally. Welcome to The Intimate Philosopher, where philosophy meets intimacy and life's biggest questions finally feel at home. I'm Dr. Emma Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and existential philosophy nerd, inviting you to join me for an after-hours conversation. This is a space to slow down, pour a glass of wine, or maybe a cup of tea, and explore the messy, beautiful intersections of meaning, connection, desire, and being fully human. This is the place for real conversations about the parts of life that don't fit neatly into a box. So, grab your glass, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, friends, and welcome back to The Intimate Philosopher. My name is Dr. Emma Smith, and I am joined again by Dr. Alivia Stehlik. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I am really excited to talk about today's episode because, one, it involves books.
Books are your favorite. Books are our favorite.
Books are our favorite, for sure. And it involves surprises. And I love when I have an expectation of something and then it completely surprises me. So I'm really excited about that.
So recently, we've been reading this book, 10x is Easier Than 2x, by Dan Sullivan
Mhm.
and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, this book.
Yes.
And so, what are you thinking about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I actually resisted reading it for a while because when you think about the whole 10x thing, especially in the business space, to me, it's synonymous with a lot of like finance bro, VC bro style, uh, build your business, make a buttload of money, just 10x, 10x, 10x. And like, even when you see some of the infomercials, or I guess they're not really wow, I'm dating myself now. Remember when infomercials were a thing? Now it's Instagram like real ads and stuff where they have like these stacks of cash that they're just, putting up on this table. It gets real ridiculous real quick. And so when people had mentioned this book to me, I thought it was in that genre of business book, and I was like, I'm good. Um, that's okay." And then I happened to catch a clip of Dr. Benjamin Hardy on YouTube, and it sounded completely different, and I was like, "Wait a second." And then I realized, "Oh, he's the 10x is easier than 2x guy. Wait, wait, wait." And so then I started actually, I listened to part of the audiobook first. I wasn't even committed to buying it. I was like, "I will get this from the library." That's how resistant I'm like, "Let me just put my toe in the water." And then within 5 minutes of listening to it, I ordered the hard copy because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna wanna highlight, I'm gonna wanna take notes." And so here we are. And then, within a few minutes of me having that, then you started reading it. And so now here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
What's been you said within the first couple minutes you decided to order the book, but and I know you're further into it than that now, but what's been the most, I don't know, surprising thing? Because like you said, this 10x is easier than 2x isn't really the realm of existential philosophy, maybe. But what has surprised you?
Well, funny that you bring that up because actually, one of the first philosophers who is quoted in this book is Viktor Frankl, who is the reason that I am a therapist at all and an existential one at that. And so to have him be a linchpin, right, and like a really foundational character, if you will, or thought leader in this book about business was pretty shocking to me, and like in the best way, in the best way. So what I ended up finding out is that, as opposed to being in this kind of business bro genre, it's actually tied to what we talked about in our last episode, which is quality, right? And it's about, 10x isn't necessarily about making more money. I think that often it can be, and that comes along with it, but it's framed in this idea of when you 10x something, you actually expand and you go deeper into becoming a better version of yourself, either professionally or personally.
Or
So,
both,
or
because it
both.
probably has to be both if you're gonna do one. I imagine that those 2 go hand in hand.
I mean, I think he would argue that, yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting, one of the kind of core tenets of the book, I think I'm probably about halfway through at this point, but one of the core tenets is this idea that, um, you know, only about 20% of what you're doing in your business at any given time is really, like, driving change or is driving, I think in the business sense, is driving your profits, like that there's always 20% that is the most valuable part of what you're doing, and then 80% of it is just kind of like, "Eh, it's fine." It's not really great, it's just the status quo, it pays the bills, but it's probably relatively easy, it's probably relatively safe, and it's probably not gonna get you to this idea of 10x.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he even mentions flow state in there too.
I know, I loved that, given that we've been talking about quality and flow state, and yeah, I love that.
Isn't that amazing how things can start to line up and it's like, oh, there's all of these different people across different disciplines and genres and fields of study, right? Who are at some point they all are arriving at a similar place around, there has to be some friction in order to grow. You have to be willing to be at your edges in order to get to that next level. And I think that's just so cool. That just tickles me in the best way. I love that. I love that. So, what has been the most surprising thing about this book for you?
I think probably the thing that is the most surprising is is it surprising? I think it's probably the thing I didn't understand the most is you read this title, 10x is easier than 2x, and first of all, it sounds too good to be true. And second of all, it kind of sounds like nonsense, if I'm being completely honest. But the further I get into it, it's not talking about 10 times in a literal sense. Um, it's a qualitative change. And he uses a lot of different metaphors to talk about this, or a lot of different scenarios. Like when you learn to read, you've 10x'd. When you've learned to walk, you've 10x'd. When you learn to drive a car, or if you learn to fly a plane, I would have added, if you learn to ride a motorcycle, you've 10x'd, right? It's a qualitative shift in, or a qualitative change in your state of being, right? It is categorically different than it was before. And, my little math brain also would say that, it is a decimal point shift. It is not just more, like we're literally shifting a decimal point to 10x something, but it's not about the number. It is a shift. It's a categorical change. It's not about it being more. It's about it being different in an exponential way.
Okay. Okay. So if that's the 10x, right? If that's that seismic qualitative shift, right? Well, I'm thinking, like, maybe seismic's not the word because that's still too much, like, quantity, right? It's but just in this, you know, you are no longer who you used to be,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Which is so trippy considering all of these brilliant people that I'm working with who they are has absolutely gotten them to where they are. And so when you ask people to change that, while they're standing on a mountain of success, they kinda look at you like you're nuts. Like
Yeah, I bet. It would be really challenging to, if we were to look at this from a relational standpoint, like to ask somebody to change 80% of what they're doing, right? If 20% is what's working really well, it must be really scary to imagine changing 80% of your relationship or letting go of 80% of your relationship. It seems
Yeah.
like that would be really hard for people if they're coming to see you. They think they're there for like some narrow specific problem, like, oh, well, like everything's great except for our sex life. And then it turns out they like have to reinvent 80% of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is exactly what I asked them to do, and they do absolutely come in thinking that it's going to be this 20% because, I mean, how if you think about in, like, strict percentages of your day, how much would sex take up, right?
A lot less than 20%,
It's a
probably, for
it
most
is
people.
for most people, it is a lot less. It is a lot less, right? And for anybody out there who is thinking that the average is some marathon multi-hour session, I think the average is somewhere between like 10 and 15 minutes, right? So when you think about, okay, so how much time does that take up percentage wise daily? They come in thinking that it's just going to be this little shift. And I'm like, no, 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 for the type of relationship that you're saying that you want, right? And the type of relationship that probably most people now, at least in the United States, are interested in having, it is actually an 80% shift.
So you're saying it's about more than just the sex?
It is more than just the sex, especially when we're like reducing sex down to a physical act, right? Instead of thinking about what are all of the conditions and contexts that create the space for desire to emerge, for bodies to become aroused, and for then you to actually make the time and capitalize on the time that you do have to go and connect that way. Okay, folks, it's time for a quick sponsor break. And this one is a paid partnership, and it's about a product that I actually use. It's called the Nine to Kind Possibility Planner. It's undated, therapist created, and honestly, it's the first planner that I've stuck with because it's not built around perfection. No shame spirals if you miss a week, no toxic positivity goal pages. It's designed for people committed to progress and not perfection. And that is exactly why I love it. So go to ninetokind.com and use code Emma20 for 20% off your order. That's ninetokind.com, code Emma20. Supporting them helps support this show. Right. So yeah, I know people come in thinking like, "Oh, we're just going to talk about sex." And I'm like, "Ooh,
Giggling over here because you and I have had this conversation before many times that I say often that everything is sex.
I know, you and Abby Wambach."
Look, I am proud to be in that esteemed company. I will say that. Like, if that is the company I'm in, I am here for it.
Yeah. It's so interesting in many ways, I'm the sex therapist, but you were probably more evolved in some ways. Like I remember when you were talking about, well, like making coffee could be sex. And I looked at you like, what?
You did. You were not convinced, I will say.
That was so, so funny. I'm like, what? Okay, say more about that, and it took a minute because I think for me I certainly wasn't thinking about my coffee that way, but also I will say this, the way that you make coffee is very different than how I used to make coffee. I used to make coffee by setting it the night before and then waking up to coffee already brewed. You and your Chemex have this whole process, and so it does have this much more laborious kind of quality process to it, and so, auto drip's not sexy, right?
Auto drip is not the sex. It's true. It's
Right.
true. There is something about the making, right, that is I mean, we could use this as a metaphor for relationships too, right? Like there's a reason I say that like making coffee can be the sex. It's the and I've even gone so far as to have a manual hand grinder, which I don't use every morning. I do use it sometimes, but having like everything set up just so and taking the time to make it just so because it's better that way. And I believe, and I don't know if I could prove this. I suppose we could do some kind of like blind taste test, but I believe that the if you could make it the same way automatically as you could doing it by hand, it still wouldn't taste as good. It still wouldn't be as good because there is energy and love imbued into that. There is here's my woo-woo showing that like that matters. It's not nothing, right? Like it's just not. I'm just firmly convinced of that.
Yes, you are.
Look,
Yeah.
look, I'm just saying there's there is a difference when and not that I'm like a coffee craftswoman. Like there are people who make me look like, a very, very mediocre coffee maker. But when you're doing something with intention and you constantly tweak your process because things aren't working or because it's not as good as it could be, like that's how you get to a life that you want. That's how you get to a cup of coffee that you want too.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I'm laughing and we're having fun because one is just I love messing with you specifically about this. And we went back and forth literally for years on whether or not auto drip was the same thing as what you were doing. And finally, she has finally convinced me, folks. I know. She has finally convinced me, right? And I mean, listen, when the Chemex broke, and you were like, "Well, we could look into something else." And then I said, "No." Like, now I just associate that with you, right?
That's
So
true.
now it's kinda taken on its own thing. But I think that there is, the care that you take with that, right? And specifically to know that it is, for me, right? Like, that's so lovely, and it's so beautiful, and it's such a gift, right? And then I think about, relationships in general and expanding that out and saying like how much attention to the quality do we put into our interactions with people, right? And just like, and yes, romance, yes, sexual, but also whoever you're interacting with, and this idea of is presence is about quality.
It is.
Right? And so then when you think about, the person that you're building your life with and you're sharing your life with and the person that, people sit on my couch all the time and they say, "This is my best friend." Right? And then you hear how they talk to one another and you think, "Well, that's not saying much anymore, is it?" Right? And don't get me wrong, like, I know of course, I don't say that, and I think that a lot of times, look, building a life with somebody and being married to somebody for many years is a challenge, right? So, like, I'm not saying that you can't have a bad moment or whatever, but I do think that there is this idea of, like, what are the 2 of you co-creating together, and do you have a shared vision for that. One of the other things, of course, I can't just buy one book, they have to come in pairs. I There's another book by the same author where he takes one of the concepts that is in 10x is easier than 2x, and he talks about future self, right? And like one of the things that he talks about is how a lot of people think, and I did too, a lot of people think that our present self is in close relationship to our past self. And like, I mean, if you've ever heard me do an intake with somebody, I am all up in people's original factory settings because I want to know, how did you get to now? And there is also a part where I talk about where we want to go. But I'll be honest with you, like until I read this, I don't know that I emphasized that as much as I will now, because there's this idea, it's counterintuitive, but he talks about this idea that we are actually more closely connected to our future self in terms of what our behavior is going to be. So our behavior in the present is more related to what we think about and how we regard our future self than our past self. And I thought that was just fascinating and mind-blowing.
That is really fascinating. I feel like we're gonna have to have a whole podcast episode on that idea because I'm just like, man, pew, 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 pew. All
Right?
these different ideas that pop up as you say that.
Yeah. And so, like, think about, for this, let's just take this one little piece. So, you know, what do you want your life to look like with your partner in retirement? Or what do you want your life to look like with your partner this upcoming holiday season? Right. So it's July. So we have 6 months until we're in the complete chaos of that time between Thanksgiving and New Year's, right? And what do you want that to look like? How do you want to feel during that time? How do you want to feel after that time about that time? And what would need to be true about your behavior today to make that possible?
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, and like there's even this exercise. It's so funny because I really need to say this book is, neither one of them is about sex or relationships. It's just, I have made it my business to take concepts that are not at all written with sex in mind or relationships in mind and make them about sex and relationships. So, uh, I don't think that Dr. Benjamin Hardy or Dan Sullivan had this in mind when they wrote this, but
I'm rubbing off on you. Everything is sex.
everything is sex. Here we are. So, one of the things that you can do is he talks about like taking stock of, you know, everything that you do right now. Right. And so, if we were going to do this in the context of relationships, it would be, what do you do right now, you and your partner, to take care of your relationship, to show up in service of your relationship? We can even make it more granular. We can say, in service of your sex life, right? Write down everything that you do in service of your sex life, write it down. And then figure out which parts are actually the parts that you love and that make you feel alive and that make you feel the way that you said in the beginning that you want to feel about yourself, your partner, and this particular type of connection that you have, right? And like cross out the ones that aren't doing that. Cross out the ones that aren't helping you feel the way that you just said that you want to feel, right?
Yeah.
And then expand on, okay, so like whatever's left over, how, it might not just be about expanding to more stuff, but it might be, hey, like let's focus on really concentrating on these things that work for us and getting them to show up more. And then I think growing and expanding from there. I don't know. I haven't finished the book yet. So I don't, this is like a rough draft that you're getting.
Well, it's interesting. I think, you just said go more granular and make it very, very narrow about what are you doing specifically to, to build the sex life that you want. Um, but I actually think that there's another window, which is to go bigger and go broader and say, what does my whole life look like? And how much of that is supportive of the relationship that I want? Because, like, all of that stuff plays in. Everything that you're doing has some bearing on the relationship that you have and that you want to have. And some of it may truly be neutral, but it is still something that you are doing. And so
Mhm.
if it is neutral and you are doing it, that is time, effort, energy, money, whatever, that could be spent doing something positive,
Yeah.
right? That is building the life that you want or the relationship that you want. And so I think there is this idea of make the aperture really big too, because all of that stuff plays in to the relationship that you have and want to have.
Yeah. No, that's so I mean, that's so good. That's so good because, it's funny, sometimes I'll get people and again, like, people who have built, like, massive, massive businesses, right? And so so incredible at what they do, and it's always interesting to me that people will treat their relationship as if it has no impact on their business,
Mm,
which is absolutely not true. And it's really interesting. So we have the master class coming up on August 14th, and I am actually going into this. So it's like I'm dying to like tell you all about it, but I also want to I can't give you everything here. I have to keep some stuff for the 14th. But like one of the things that I found, and I'm a nerd, so I'm going to go looking for this stuff, is actually there is data to support that the quality of your relationships predicts your wealth and your success in business. And I thought that was incredible, right? And so, like, when you think about investing in this relationship, it's not just a nice to have, right? It is actually something that can set you up to to propel yourself forward into a whole other stratosphere because things that maybe used to get in the way of holding you back are no longer holding you back. And if you think about it, this is already in the popular culture too. For anybody who has this is some business bro stuff. I'm not going to lie, okay? But have you ever and don't lie because I know that people have already come in and told me this. Okay. So I already know the answer is yes. But have you ever had one of your coworkers come in the morning and they have a little more pep in their step and they're a little more positive and you go, I bet he got laid last night. Right. And people tell me this. Right. So I already know you're at least having the silent thought in your head, if not out loud, which I think is really funny. Um, and why would that be a trope? Because there's probably a little truth to it, right? So we'll go in more into this, but I'm so excited because you know, whoever would have thought that I would go from making $11 an hour at a rape crisis center in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Sorry, Brazos County. You you are in fact the middle of nowhere.
sorry, not sorry, but we love you.
Yeah, we do. Um, hopefully I can make it back one time for the conference that I used to present at. It was really fun. And it was the middle of nowhere and it was $11 an hour, right? Working with whoever walked through the door and to go from that, we were talking about 10xing, right? To go from that to sitting on the couch with these absolutely brilliant, incredibly expansive, business-minded folks who give me a run for my money every single time because they're so smart and they're so good at what they do. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I know everything that you're saying has worked for you so brilliantly. And like, I'm about to take you on this journey where I'm going to ask you to stop doing all that stuff. And there's this great line in this book. Do you want to say it? Because you're the one that actually gave it to me.
No, go for it.
Go for it? Okay. So that whole idea of, you know, oh gosh, what's the old one? Now I forget.
What got you here won't get you there.
Yes. But the version of it in the book is what got you here will keep you here. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, yes, that's it. That's it. Yes, absolutely. What got you here was amazing and it got you to here. Like how freaking cool is that? And it's going to keep you here." Right? And so like as I'm kind of going through, I feel that because the same things that got me to here where I'm able to work with the people that I'm working with now, I'm only able to do that because I am open to rethinking how I'm approaching this and how I'm approaching the work because this group of people needs something different, right? And so it's been one hell of a journey. And like, you know, if anybody knows Dr. Benjamin Hardy, please pass along to him that his book is so great for talking about sex and relationships. So
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, oh, so I guess I should say that in the show notes, you will find the link to register for the masterclass. It's going to happen on August 14th, and we'll start at noon Central Time. And we're going to spend the afternoon together. And I have some really cool people who are going to join us. One of them is Alex West, who is a former Navy SEAL. He was on SEAL Team 6 as an operator for more years than I can believe. I need to find out what his skincare regimen is because he looks great. And so he's going to come on with us and talk about some really cool stuff about being present and understanding that, yes, you operate at a really high capacity. Like, there's nobody better suited to have this conversation than Alex, and saying, and you have to know when to turn that off and switch into a different mode. And then I also have Natty Frasca, who is the host of the Feminine Rebellion podcast, and she is a pleasure coach. And she is going to bust wide open all of the myths that women have been taught about their bodies and pleasure, and really kind of, picking apart these just damaging ideas about suppressing our desire for everybody else. And then I get to come in and do my nerd thing. And so we're going to talk about how, desire and sex and intimacy in relationships is actually enhancing to whatever it is that you're trying to do in your life, whether that's in business or just, whatever you're doing as a professional. And so we're going to do that. We're going to spend the afternoon together, and it's completely free for folks to join. It's going to be live on Zoom. There is a VIP upgrade. So if you're like, but I want more, then there is a little VIP upgrade. But here's also the thing that I want people to get is that even if you don't do that, and this is really important to me because to me, it's just about integrity. Even if you don't upgrade to VIP, even if you just do the free masterclass, like you are going to get time with me. You're going to get intentional time with Alex. You're going to get intentional time with Natty. Like it is its own standalone thing. Like the upgrade literally, really, truly is an upgrade. But you can just come and spend an afternoon with us and learn all about the conditions that you have been taught that are actually suppressing your desire. And specifically, if you have been taught how to be brilliant at business, oh boy, do I have some news for you about how that translates when you get home. But we're also going to talk about the fact that if you're smart enough to be successful in all of these other things, guess what? This is well within reach. Nobody's ever taught you this, and that's why you don't know it. But anyway, I'll pause there and I'll say that the link to register is in the show notes, and I really hope to see you all there because I think it's just going to be a special afternoon. It really is.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be
Me,
great.
me too. So anyway, well, any parting thoughts?
No, I
All
think
right.
that's it.
Okay, well, we'll wrap up and say thank you so much for spending this time with us. And if you have questions about this book or 10xing or how this pertains to sex or how to make a better cup of coffee, please send us a comment. And we have a comment form in the show notes as well. And then we will get Dr. Olivia on that. She is a woman of many talents, from physical therapy to making coffee. All right. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for this after hours conversation. If something in today's episode made you pause, get curious, or see yourself a little more clearly, share it with a friend and keep that conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring that messy, beautiful space between meaning and being human. I'll see you next time.